Good evening. Welcome to this Happy Guru. My name is Kirsty Bentley Taylor. I'm talking to you at the moment, or this section of the show, about emotions. Last week, I started talking about emotions and how important they are to us. May sound kind of like, yeah, of course, emotions, right? But what's been interesting me about my research through the topic of emotions is really about how they physically affect us, not just in the present moment when you're actually feeling them and you're going through these emotions, but also the fact that the body stores emotional stress and emotional upset, and how that can kind of lead through to disease and through mental health issues and all those sorts of things. So last week I started talking about this and I kind of got a little bit personal. I've been going through a lot of emotional stuff myself over the last few weeks. And I kind of ended up sharing a lot of stories of kind of ways that I'd noticed emotions being held in my body. And this week I kind of decided that actually I kind of needed a bit of science to kind of back up all this sort of stuff. And I've leaned heavily into my research looking at Chinese medicine, and the way that the Chinese really look at emotional health as part of the way that they treat people, with their medicine and with their holistic therapies and all that sort of thing. I've also been leaning into my work with essential oils. I'm recently, well, I say recently, probably about 2 years ago, I kind of was thrown into this emotional and essential oil journey that I have been exploring ever since. I had a couple of things come into my life. You know how the universe kind of just drops stuff into your life. And within the space of a week, I had 3 people introduce me to this particular brand of essential oils. And the feedback from them was that they were amazing, they're really good for your health and all that sort of thing, but also that they were unparalleled in terms of being able to affect and manage your emotional health. And I hadn't really looked into emotional health and what you could use to support yourself emotionally. I've been through a lot of emotional stuff in my life, but I kind of just processed it through the things that I already had in my life in place, like through my yoga, through my pranayama, through my breathing exercises, through meditation, and through exercise, leaning into being supported emotionally by, sort of like nature around me. So that would be for me a lot of long walks on beaches and stuff, and really grounding myself into this world. But it also came through my purchase of a dog. I say purchase, like it's kind of I just bought it, but he really came into my life and he's really helped support me. And I know a lot of my friends really find a lot of support and a lot of emotional support, especially with their animals. There's no arguing, there's no coming back, there's just kind of love back from these kind of little creatures that don't talk the same language that we talk, don't necessarily feel or respond the same things that we feel and respond to, but they definitely feel love and they definitely express joy, and there's definitely a fear-based response that animals tend to have. And so in that respect, we can really connect and empathize through our natural world as well with some of the things that we express and feel emotionally. So I decided that this week was going to be kind of more about the science to back up the experiences I had in my life. The sort of the ding dong moments for me, if you like, when I've read stuff, when I've researched stuff and I've been like, whoa, that totally resonates with me because of this experience and that experience. So I just kind of want to recap over what I went through last week, just in case you're joining us for the first time. And then I'm going to dive into some of the kind of literature that I've been reading, and the insights that I've had through my research on emotions and how they can really affect you, not just mentally or intellectually, psychically, if you like, but also how they affect your physical self. And of course, we know that the 5 parts of yourself, your energy self, or your spiritual self, your emotional self, your psychical self, and your physical self, they permeate through one another. One affects the other. There's no kind of denying that. You know that when, for example, you're really, really nervous about a job interview and you just can't eat, or you feel sick or something, there's a physical response to that anxiety, to those nerves. You also know that if you're feeling great joy, you have this whole feeling of kind of lightness in your body where, and there's a real opening of your heart, and you can feel like your heart's gotten bigger almost with love. We know all those things. We've experienced these things. So I really wanted to kind of reflect back as well how important it is to do the emotional work, as well, because emotions, and certainly negative emotions especially, permeate into your body, permeate into your cellular health, and they really need to be addressed. And one of the things that I suppose has come across to me on a personal level over the last few weeks, where I've been dealing particularly with grief after losing a very close friend, is that negative emotions take up so much headspace. They affect your physicality, your energy levels as well. They really are a part of you that you need to deal with. And yet we've never really, or I personally have never really had any guidance on this, certainly not through school. Only, I suppose, through my parents being able to hold a space for me while I moved through sets of emotions. But really no guidance, no real level of acceptance, in the sense of nobody's ever said to me, you know, it's okay to express something like anger. Okay, it's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to feel fear. Usually I've had the idea that, you know, if you're scared of something, you need to kind of get a grip, or you need to, you know, pull your big girl pants up. If you're scared or you're feeling fear in one level or another, you really are like, you know, kind of you need to grow a pair, you know, these sorts of things that kind of we talk about with our language construct, as a way of being able to deal with emotions, but not really move through emotions. And there's a big difference in that for me. Dealing with emotions in terms of having to kind of, you know, pull your big girl pants up, get a grip, move forward, you know, stiff upper lip, those sorts of things. They really invite you to move past that emotion without actually giving it any room to be felt. And the thing with emotions is it's all about feelings. And in my experience, to be able to really process an emotion, you have to hold space for it. You have to kind of hold the space to be able to experience, to be able to feel, to be able to look at all the layers of an emotion. Because again, in my experience, emotions are just not one thing. They're many things. And there are layers upon layers that you end up pulling back as you begin to reveal what maybe triggered this emotion for you, the underlying fears and emotions or feelings from emotions that you associate with past experiences, with the idea that you may, you know, have to kind of let go of something. Often there's a lot of fear around loss and around letting go of something. There's no dialogue or conversation around that, that's really open, and certainly not to children. Again, you know, we grow up being told that we should be this and we should be that, and we should walk this way in life, and you know, gain these qualifications and look a certain way. But no one ever really talks to you about the emotions that you're going to feel throughout life and how best to kind of handle those. And I feel that maybe one of the reasons that we're seeing so much depression and obesity and anxiety and all number of different diseases that are really beginning to take control of us as a species, a lot of that might be to do with the fact that we're suppressing so many emotions, and that we're not taught and we're not encouraged to express and feel through our feelings. So I kind of wanted to touch into that today and go through some of the information that I found. So last week we really touched on the 27 emotions, or the 27 documented emotions that humans feel. We talked about emotions being a complex psychological state that involved three distinct components: a subjective experience, a physiological response. So, you know, even science recognizes that it comes into your physicality, and a behavioral or expressive response that's related to that as well. So that's kind of the science behind an emotion. We then looked briefly at how and where energy centers in your body begin to express emotional responses. And we looked at the 7 chakras, the 7 very basic chakras, points that, you know, the majority of us perhaps will have come into contact with in our search for understanding of how we work as individuals. And we looked at the root chakra, the Muladhara chakra, which is based in instinct, security, survival, grounding. It's also where you're going to manifest your fear. And it's very much a self-acceptance point, and that would be your lowest chakra around your root base there. Moving up to the sacral chakra, which is about fluidity, sense of self, and also kind of resonates around your creative parts of your body. So around like the uterus for women, and around the around the corresponding areas for men, they're getting all scientific on that, but just the creative centers there. So your genital area, around that sort of thing, that creative space that holds the ovaries for the women, and also kind of around your prostate gland, and holding into where the sperm production is made in your testes for the men. Also, you come up then to the solar plexus, which is probably one that we're most familiar with when we think of our emotions, because we might think of anxiety and fear and how we get butterflies in our stomach and that sort of thing when we hit into that chakra there. And that's a lot about will, purpose, strength, also your creativity, creating the day that you experience, your perception as well. Coming up towards the heart chakra, which kind of is self-explanatory. It's love, it's connection, it is compassion, balance, acceptance. It's all those sort of things that you feel with your heart. Coming up towards the throat chakra next, speaking your truth, communication, creativity, resonance, how you feel your part is played in this world. Coming up next to the Ajna chakra, your brow chakra, your third eye, which is about perception, intuition, imagination. And really from this part, you're going to begin to really perceive your world, and perceive through the emotions that you're experiencing that are triggered by certain ways that you would look out at your world, and the way that you kind of perhaps feel that you're being perceived in front of other people. Then you've got the crown chakra, wisdom, knowledge, spiritual connection, the one right at the top here. And again, when you're really resonating into that chakra, you're probably feeling some of the more higher emotions. You're probably feeling more joy. You're feeling your connection with the divine. It's kind of where your faith would be held, your intuition, your higher knowledge, your higher base. So if you're kind of ever feeling strange feelings around the top of your head, sometimes I'll get like a tingling in meditation, a feeling of being very open there, being very connected, towards light and towards the universe as a whole. And that would be where you'd be feeling those sorts of things. But for me anyway, certainly around that area, the more emotional senses tend to be more like joy, and inspiration, high levels of kind of like what I call a drop-in, where you receive communication or you receive intelligence from the wider community, from the one universe that you become a part of, through meditation or through mainly through meditation, or being able to take yourself into kind of a more enlightened point of view or perspective that day. So I started thinking about Chinese medicine. And last week we touched in on that. And I went through what happens when you let chronic stress and negative emotions affect your body. And we went sort of slowly round the parts of your body that are affected by negative emotion and how that might look to you, or how you might feel like you're responding. And what I asked you to do is really to set in with yourself, and sit present in the person that you are, where you feel you hold stresses. So you can do that by closing your eyes and really taking your mind into your body and being able to kind of move gradually through your physical self, noticing where you perhaps hold tension. This is something that I do most mornings when I sit down into my meditation before I start my daily practice. I will drop into exactly how I'm feeling that day, because stuff happens overnight, right? Like, you might have some crazy ass dreams and you might wake up feeling emotional about that. I know sort of things like lucid dreams, for example. I've had some crazy dreams where I've gone into higher planes and stuff like that, but I've also had some crazy dreams where I've taken myself into a really emotionally responsive state. Had dreams about my partner cheating on me, for example. Had dreams that I've lost my baby. Crazy sort of things like this, which, I mean, I don't know where they come from. And I'm always so curious about dreams, and what it is that they're kind of trying to manifest, whether it is just processing of your life and the day that you've had, and bringing stuff in so that you can actually face it and realize it, or whatever it is, I don't know. Certainly I find that my dream patterns tend to change around times of stress. When we were looking at immigrating or moving back to the UK from Thailand, I had lots of crazy dreams about, and they seem to be the theme seemed to be about whether or not this was kind of the right decision. There was a lot of There was a lot of looking at things differently, and there was a lot of making decisions and then finding that they'd been the wrong decisions through my dream patterns. And I kind of think that that was really, I suppose, my subconscious mind or my higher consciousness as well, just asking me to really think about the decision I've made and whether or not it was the right one for me. And fortunately, I woke up, from those dreams, and I felt like, "Ooh, that was, a crazy one," but I felt secure and solid in the decision that we'd made to move back. So that was, obviously fortunate at that time. So I wanted to again dip into the Chinese way of looking at the emotional energy centers of your body, and what can what that can then lead to in terms of your physical self. So I looked up onto Louise Hay's website. I'm sure majority of you are familiar with Louise Hay, and certainly probably be familiar with some of the novels and authors and speakers and podcasts and stuff released by Hay House Productions. So starting, I suppose, at the root center, if we're going to move up the chakras as I've just gone through. So we're looking at like the root center, and we're looking at our survival center here. Feeling that we won't survive a life-threatening incident is one of these things that might affect that lower point. Violations relating to surviving, accidents, abuse, violence, rape, or any of those things. If you have experienced any of those things or any of those things that come close to that. So for example, I haven't experienced rape, but I have experienced forced intercourse, shall we say, or intercourse that's been against my ultimate wishes. It's not rape because it's not, I consented to it, but it wasn't something I felt good about. It wasn't something that I necessarily wanted. It was something that I felt like I was obliged to do. And as I look back throughout my life, and I've done quite a lot of work from this, there's been kind of a lot of instances like that for me, where I feel like I've had to go into a place where I wasn't 100% comfortable, but I've just kind of done it through obligation, through duty, through the feeling that it's part of my responsibility as being this part of a relationship. And there's a lot of negative emotion attached to that for me. And I've done a lot of work on this. So I'm very aware of how I've kind of moved through this and what it's brought up for me. This idea that, you're in a relationship, therefore you are duty bound to perform certain things is something that I strongly advise you not to get into the pattern of receiving for yourself, because it is negative. There is no way that opening yourself up in that sense, becoming really, really vulnerable, and accepting that kind of that physical, energetic and emotional force within what should be really a sacred kind of ritual, if you like. There's no way that you can get away from the negativity that surrounds just allowing that to happen when you aren't really invested in it. So I think that something like that, for example, really, if you've ever felt like that, go back into your past, go back into that experience and try to heal yourself through that. Now, I did that through forgiveness. I've done a number of meditations actually over the years on forgiving not only the person that was involved in that or the people that were involved in that, but myself. In fact, I found that actually I was the one that I really needed to forgive in this instance, because I felt like I'd let myself down. I felt like I had done myself an injustice. I felt weak. I felt pathetic. I felt like I'd allowed abuse to happen, if you like. And there's a lot of stuff that kind of came up for me around there. A lot of emotional stuff, really thinking that, again, like I say, I'd let myself down and that I should have thought more of myself. Why didn't I think more of myself? Why didn't I feel like I was, able to say no and to actually say, do you know what? I'm just not in that place right now. You really shouldn't have to explain yourself much more than that, I don't think. I think any partner that you're with, that you're entering into that sort of relationship with, should be able to understand and respect that. And I'm really just not in that place right now. I just, I'd really rather that we didn't. And I think that if you're in a loving relationship whereby, you're having these intimate relations, shall we say, the other person who should be loving you and feeling the same way you do about it should be able to accept that. Boom, that's it. No more explanation. You're just not in that place right now, and that's fine. But it's definitely something that if you ever feel like you've been in that position, ladies or gents, go back and heal yourself through that, because there's a lot of stuff that I found was attached to that, actually. A lot of lack of self-worth. And as I've moved through all sorts of work on self-worth and not feeling good enough, and or feeling like I am of lesser value, shall we say, in terms of my personal relationships, in terms of my professional relationships, this sort of stuff permeates into the majority of things that you move through in your life. And this is my experience, and this is why I say heal yourself, because these emotions resonate and they stay where they are, or where they're centered in. And this root chakra down there, right at the base of your spine, it's kind of like, you think about your foundation. We know that when we build a house, we need a really strong foundation for the walls to be strong and for them to weather storms. For then the roof, the upper part of your house, the stairwells, the floors, all those sorts of things. For all of those sorts of things to be steady, going up and rising up towards the sky, the foundation needs to be strong. If the foundation is weak, then you weaken the walls, you weaken the floors, the stairwell, will ricochet. Your roof will then become imbalanced and could crack and could permeate and let stuff in. And the important thing to remember really within this metaphor is just simply that with strong foundations, the rest of you can grow and can be built on a strength rather than a weakness. And what I've discovered with looking into that root chakra and into looking the emotions that I've stored around there is really that if you have a weakness there, it permeates through all the other chakras. It is your foundation. It's your foundational chakra. It's the place where you come from with your sense of who you are. The root chakra is all about I am. That's the mantra that we associate with any work on the root chakra is I am. It's all about who you are. So bearing in mind, from my experience, for example, that I have let myself down, if you like, these are the emotions that I've associated, the thought process that I've associated with one action or, a few actions, but essentially one action, that I have let myself down, that I feel guilt for not being stronger, that I feel like it kind of leads me into a victim mentality, because I feel like, I was put upon, I wasn't strong enough, I should have been more assertive, I shoulda, all these sorts of things. My foundation there was not strong. And it really took me forgiving myself more than anybody else, because the thing is, it's what you say to yourself every day that's important. It's not what you end up saying out to anybody else. I haven't cleared this stuff face to face with any of the people that I had these relations with. I haven't needed to, if I'm honest. I can send them forgiveness. And as long as I send myself forgiveness and I do the inner work, I'm healed. It sounds cliche. It sounds too simple almost for some of the emotions that you might be carrying. But the truth of the matter is, the person that you've most damaged with any of this sort of stuff is yourself. Words and actions hurt other people, absolutely. But it's what you carry around in yourself that is hurting you on a daily basis, because that emotion permeates that part of your body. It resonates in the very flesh, the physicality, the energy around those centers. And like I say, if your foundation, like looking at the person that you are right from the very bottom, the foundation of who you are really is so important when you begin to develop and you begin to move on and move through and look at, the things the way that you're talking to yourself, the emotions that you're experiencing, the way you interact with other people. Yeah, it affects everybody and everything that you come into contact with. So it's really, really essential to be looking at yourself from these aspects and looking back over your life and wondering and looking into aspects of hurt so that you can heal yourself. And for me, forgiving myself and allowing myself these mistakes and allowing myself this opportunity to heal was not only, very cathartic, and it released a lot of emotion that I hadn't even really realized that I'd suppressed down there. But it also gave me the opportunity to really practice a lot of self-love as well, and forgiveness and compassion towards my younger self, because that's the thing as well. We all make mistakes. There are a lot of things that I've done in my life that I'm not particularly proud of, but we all make mistakes. And it's important to forgive yourself for any of the mistakes that you've made. So anything that you might be experiencing around your lower back, around your hips, around your reproductive organs, around carrying weight, perhaps around there, any imbalance that you might feel around your hips, around your that whole area, that whole kind of band that surrounds the root chakra. I would really suggest that you kind of have a little look into that and have a look as to perhaps why, associate that with why, things that happened in your past that you may still be holding onto around that area, and have a look into that. Other things that we might feel down in that kind of area, we're looking at impotence, frigidity, so feeling cold towards people, shutting down in that sense. The first year of life and basic creativity. So the first year of life sounds crazy, but it's actually a very paramount point in our lives. And it's a point that we as individuals really have very little control over. It's a year of real absorption as a human being. You're learning who you can trust. You're learning about your environment. You're learning where fundamental things like food and drink come from. You're learning about your security networks, who you can and can't trust almost. And you learn that on such a subliminal level. You're not learning this through people saying, you can trust me, it's fine. You're learning it through energy. You're learning it through absorption of emotion itself. And so for the first year in your life, you're really subject to a lot of emotions. You're subject to a lot of outside influence that you absorb like a sponge, learning about your environment. And so again, if you experienced any trauma in the early years of your life, if you experienced any abandonment, any, maybe you were brought up by one parent opposed to two, any imbalance, if you like, in that area, in that time of your life, then look towards the lower chakra for healing there as well. And begin to practice really resonating your own thought processes, your own energy control around that lower chakra, inviting it to release and let go, and begin to face some of the emotions that come up to you, some of the memories perhaps as well that come up to you when you're moving through those chakra, those energy points. It's also a center for rejection, for betrayal. It all sounds so negative, but unfortunately it's the negative stuff that stays with you. Joy tends to rush through your body and make you feel these amazing feelings, and it makes you feel good for a period of time. But we tend to let go of joy. It's crazy. We tend to experience more joy, fortunately, but we tend to really hold on to the negative emotions. And it's because they teach us more. Joy is a return to our natural state. So when we experience it, we feel overwhelmingly happy. We feel enlightenment, if you like, in the sense of, yes, and this is what it's all about. But because it's almost our natural state, we don't tend to learn from it. We don't really need to. It's like we've just returned home. But when you experience something negative in your life, it's a learning curve. And for that reason, our body responds, our psychic selves respond, our emotional selves respond, our soul responds to learn and to hold on to that so that we might learn for the future. So rejection centers, facing things like abandonment, criticism, judgments by others, self-rejection, I've talked about that, abandonment and pain in the heart. Also being betrayed by someone we trusted, and self-betrayal, so letting yourself down. All of these things we might feel around the kind of the reproductive organs, around the lower back, a lot of lower back problems, can be alleviated by really working on symptoms and energy blockages around the lower chakra. And so I think it's kind of, again, one of those things, if any of these words have resonated with you, take the time to look and explore further into that. Not, when you feel ready, when you feel able to face it, when you know that there's something going on down there and you need to face it, that's when you need to do the work. And I believe wholeheartedly that if you're watching this now and something just triggers you like that and you think, oh God, I've got lower back pain, I've got lower back problems, I've got a slipped disc, I'm having trouble conceiving, I have real issues with my periods, I have real issues with impotence, and maybe erectile dysfunction, those sorts of things. Get help. You don't need to do this all on your own. It's important for you to be able to process this and to do this, to do this work. But you don't have to do it on your own. It doesn't have to be this private kind of just behind closed doors work that you do. And I'm a strong advocate for speaking your truth and speaking from the heart, because I believe that if we did that a little bit more, then some of this emotional baggage wouldn't be carried by us, because we'd be able to process it, because we'd feel comfortable about talking about our emotions, and we'd feel comfortable at expressing them then and there in the moment, as they are designed to be felt then and there in the moment, not repressed until you get home and then you suddenly burst into tears, not held down and held tight within ourselves until it's a convenient moment to be able to deal with it. Emotions come up to be recognized. They're triggered by things and then they rise to be seen. If you start compressing and pushing down your emotions, you're really pushing that down further and further into yourself, into your physical self, into your mental self, because it takes up a lot of headspace if you don't process emotions. There's a lot of second guessing. There's a lot of questioning yourself. There's a lot of self-doubt. There's a lot of wondering. And really, all that sort of stuff takes up so much headspace that it becomes stressful. It becomes anxiety, essentially. It can become depression. So this is, some of the reasons why we need to face these things. Moving up into the sort of central part of your body. So any issues around the stomach, perhaps irritable bowel syndrome, this kind of blanket doctor's way of saying we're really not sure what's going on with your stomach, but it's irritated. It's not, it's not in a state of peace or tranquility. It's not in balance. It's irritated. And that can be, irritable bowel syndrome is anything really, from your stomach right down through to your, your elimination processes, right down into your bowel, your eliminating bowel, if you like. And this all centers around old stuff, which was fascinating for me, because of course the majority of our health also stems from the gut, right? Your immune system stems from the health of your gut. And so that was fascinating to me. When I started reading about that, I was like, oh my God, so all old stuff, all those emotions that you haven't processed are lodged in your stomach. Of course, the center of processing for our bodies, right? Everything that we take in, whether it be food or drink, it all goes down into our stomach to be processed, to have the goodness drawn out, and anything else that we don't need is eliminated, sent away. So fascinating for me that also emotions are stored and kept and held in this exact same process within our stomach, from our stomach into our upper intestine or our small intestine, down into our larger intestine, and into our bowel, right? So all this stuff is held there still. And it's old stuff can send to here. The same way old foods get lodged in your intestine. They drop into the lowest parts of the sac of your stomach. And you need to kind of cleanse and really, flush through the gut at least once a year to be able to maintain real gut health and to be able to keep on top of a really healthy immune system, as well as taking on board of the, the good foods and the nutrients, and, regular kind of fasting and all those sorts of things that we know that we should be doing to maintain optimum gut health. So just to bring that in now, family and sexual issues, again, can be up here. Childhood conditioning. I mean, unbelievable, right? Childhood conditioning, violation of body or personal space, something that's been done to us, something taken from us without our permission. molestation, abuse, rape, impotence, frigidity again. So this whole area, you know, which is so closely linked together and is affecting so many different diseases, is coming through all these sorts of things, which I have to say, I know that my story that I spoke about earlier about kind of, you know, forced or coerced intercourse, I am not alone. I know the majority of women and majority of my friends have been through the same thing. You know, we have, and I'm sure we're not alone in that either. I'm sure that in what I mean by alone in that either, I'm sure that my male counterparts, if they were a little bit more perhaps open with me, you know, girls tend to chat. And, you know, certainly being a girl, I tend to chat with more women than I do men, especially about personal things like this. You know, my male friendships tend to be much more fun-based, thankfully. But all this sort of stuff comes up regularly. You know, when you are ashamed about something, probably you're most likely to talk to your close friends, whether you be male or female. So you might know more from your side, you know, and I'd invite any men that are listening to this to sort of contribute to that. Is this the sort of thing that you would talk about, you know, socially with your male friends, for example? You might not talk about it with women, but if you feel like you've been pushed into a situation whereby you kind of had to perform in some way, shape or form, how did that leave you feeling? And did you ever actually kind of let go of any of those negative emotions that you surrounded yourself with during that process? It's a support area, lack of financial support as well. So if you feel like you're struggling in one sense or another, if you feel like you can't rely on your partner for financial support, or even I would go as far as to say emotional support as well, because I just feel like that whole area really resonates for me and shuts down when I don't feel like I'm emotionally supported. And certainly, you know, that would be kind of when I'm least likely to be feeling great about myself. I always feel like I comfort eat as well. I've noticed this the last couple of weeks. So I'm dealing with grief at the moment. And I'm usually I know I'm a comfort eater. I know I am. I've kind of done a lot of work on how I lean into the crutches that I regularly use to support me, especially in the past. As to be able to kind of move into a more productive way of living and being able to actually process those emotions rather than eat through them. But I found myself slipping back into old habits. My kind of, you know, when your world gets rocked, it's the time when almost you need to solidify all the knowledge and all the stuff that you've learned, right? And bring it in and protect yourself, hold that around you so that you're able to really deal with this new state that you find yourself in. But I've really been struggling, I think, with the cold comfort eating thing. And I've noticed over the last sort of 10 days, especially, I've been quite weak in that sense. And it's led to a feeling of, again, letting myself down. But it's been because I think I noticed that I was kind of filling a hole. You know, that's what I recognized when I recognized that I was a comfort eater, that there was always something, there was a feeling of lacking in some respect that I felt like every time, you know, I put specifically sweet stuff. I'm not particularly savory minded when it comes to my comfort eating. It's all about kind of cake and sweets and chocolate and that sort of thing. And so when I'm in that state and I'm floundering, if you like, emotionally, I'm a big comfort eater. And I've noticed that I've gone back into that over the last sort of 2 weeks, 10 days. And it's led me to be much more conscientious about myself. How else, if I'm not stuffing food into my face, how else can I fill this void? And one of the things that I've been practicing over the last few days is really sitting with that void and allowing it to be, because I have this ever-growing hole in my heart at the moment where I am accepting loss and accepting and feeling my grief. And what I recognized was that as I was kind of stuffing cheesecake into my face at the weekend, that I was actually just trying to fill this hole that I really feel at the moment inside my heart. And I know through previous experience that this hole will come and then it will kind of go and it will leave a scar and it will leave a memory or lots of memories. but I know how to deal with it from previous experiences. But what I hadn't realized is that I hadn't quite cleared my emotional lean to, my emotional crutch of comfort eating. And so I know kind of, what I've used in the past. And so just to quickly share that with you, what I've used for grief in the past has been building rituals into my life whereby I celebrate the people that I've lost. And so I would think about my relationship with them, what made it special to me, what were the overwhelming memories, the things that really made me smile, the times when I'd really felt supported by them or loved by them, or the things that we'd had in common, anything like that. And I turn all those things into a ritual for myself to be able to celebrate the relationship that I had with that person while we were both here together in this dimension, in this world at this time. And so, for example, with my grandparents, my grandma introduced me to musicals. And because of her, I still have a innate love for musicals and a love for singing and dancing and performing that stemmed from this. Specifically, she introduced me to like The Sound of Music, Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, Oklahoma, these old 1950s, 60 musicals that even now, really remind me of her. And we would sing through, we'd sit down together whenever my grandma would look after myself and my sister. And I know my sister has the same love for these musicals as I do, because we would sit down together and we would sing through all the choruses and we learnt the words and we watched them over and over again, rewinding the video, because, that's how old I am. You can rewind the video and replay and re-sing and really bond all three of us together in this love for music and this love for song and expression and the meaning behind the music for us. And so when my grandma passed, I was living in Thailand and I couldn't get to the funeral. And so I felt loads of emotions around that, a lot of guilt, a lot of feeling like I'd let her down, feeling like I'd let the family down. I kind of beat myself up quite a lot for not being able to be there and that I hadn't been there for her. I was coming back at that time sort of once every year, every 2 years. It's not cheap to keep coming back from Thailand to England. And that was what we were financially able to do. And so every time I came back, of course, I would go and see her like once, twice, with my granddad as well. And we spent time together just kind of going over things like the old days and all those sorts of things, reliving memories. And so that's what I decided to do as a tribute to her, was to kind of relive the memories that were held most dear about being with my grandma. And so a lot of it was around cooking. It was around singing. It was around these musicals. And so one of the things that I built into the ritual around her when I sit down and close my eyes and think of her was all of these fabulous memories that we made together, who my grandma was to me. And I sing every year now. I sing like the songs that remind me most of her. And I spend time being in a place of remembrance of her. And so I know that I'll be doing the same thing once I've got the funeral tomorrow. And once I kind of get over that, I feel like at that point I will be able to really begin to build into my life a specific time that was special to myself and my friend, for remembering her and being able to kind of build a ritual around all that. So, again, like using, for example, she was really into like leopard skin and stuff like that. She was one of the only people I know who can really carry off leopard skin and look fantastic. So there'll definitely be some kind of, leopard skin shawl or something that I'll wear when I'm thinking of her. And singing the songs that remind me of her and thinking and doing, watching film. Like, we used to watch a lot of Friends together when I was pregnant with my first child, and I was on my own. I'd come back from South America pregnant, and she allowed me to sort of sleep on her floor while I got myself sorted. I was heavily pregnant, and she basically gave up her flat for me. And so I would, she would come round occasionally, and I was working at the time, la, la, la. Anyway, she would come round and we would watch Friends together, and we would just sit there and laugh at stupid things and talk about one another. So every time, even before she passed, every time that I watched Friends, I would always think of her. And certainly that will be something that I will aim to kind of put into this ritual of remembrance that I have for her. But it allows me to keep her in my life and keep her in my heart without having to let go too much. I know I've always got that. If ever I need to touch base with her, I can go back to that ritual of sitting down, like for instance with my grandma, sitting down and remembering and singing and holding all those memories deep in my heart and recognizing what a fabulous addition she was to my life and what a wonderful role model she was and how much happiness and joy she brought into my life. So that's something that you can begin to kind of do if you're facing the same sort of thing and you just don't quite know how to cope with it. Bring a ritual into it that enables you to really celebrate the relationship that you had, for one way or another. Because remember, you chose to have this person in your life the same way they chose to have you in your life. And I believe that, whether it's family or friends. Friends, obviously, it's very easy to see that you chose them. But I do believe that as souls, we come into the bodies that we occupy because they offer us that whole scenario that we need to grow and to develop and to experience the lives that we need to lead where we're here in this planet. And in this time. So kind of for me became, and it has become, a great source of support in being able to remember in a positive light and in a positive way the people that I held dearest to me. So moving up from the old stuff center, again, family, sexual issues, childhood conditioning, violation of body or personal space, something that's been done to us, something that's been taken for us without our permission, lack of financial support, lack of emotional support. Now as we move up, we're getting to kind of anger, fear, guilt, shame. So you can see how all these kind of emotional energy centers of the body really hold on to this negativity. So moving up into the center part of the body, you're looking at anger and rage, anger at others, anger at self, jealousy, resentment. The fear center, which centers around here, fears and phobias, loss of control, fear of losing control, giving our power to another person, relationships, guilt, shame, unworthiness, lack of acceptance, self-judgment, self-criticism, not deserving of the good life has for us, inability to accept and to receive. Now, this is kind of going to be based then around your solar plexus chakra, which is kind of situated just above your belly button. And the solar plexus is your nervous center for your body. All the nerves of the body run through the solar plexus. And certainly whenever you feel anxious, this would be the part of your body that would really, really respond. And it's, your fear center, so it would respond, right? Deep breathing can really, really help to relax and let go of some of the responses that you may feel in this center. And that's because of the diaphragm. Now, the diaphragm is a real big, thick muscle that moves up and down within the center parts of your body. In yoga, we use it all the time. We use it as a holding point for energy. We use it as a way of being able to really move around stagnant energy in this area. And because it's such a big muscle and because it moves involuntarily throughout the whole day, taking deep breaths in whereby you expand your stomach and allow the diaphragm to drop down will be pushing that negativity, that negative energy, if you like, anything that's been stuck in that area, be pushing it down and allowing it up, pushing it down and allowing it up. And by that nature, you are beginning to shift and move that negative energy, that negative construct, that fear, that phobia, that anxiety, that lack of self-acceptance, that anger or rage at other people, jealousy, resentment, anything like that. So deep breathing from this center and being mindful of this center and what it is that you're trying to move can work wonders around that area. Another way of being able to shift any negative energy that you find in that center is through sound. Like again, think about your diaphragm. When that reverberates, it begins to move and resonate much like sound does through the air. And, sound is super effective. It's super creative. When you listen to a sound bowl or something like that resonates in with a particular chakra or in with your body or, through your body, you can really feel the healing vibes, the healing vibrations that go through, permeate through our air, permeate through our body, through ourselves, and affect every part of ourselves. You can create that for yourself. Right, so there's a really simple and easy way of being able to resonate sound through your body and be able to move this solar plexus up and down and to create movement within the energy chakras and the energy, the negative energy especially that's held there. And that is by doing what we call a ha breath in yoga. So that's taking a great big deep breath in and ah, ing it out. And you really want to resonate that movement. You really want to, actually made me feel better, right? But really want to reverberate that diaphragm. So if you're feeling angry, if you're feeling stressed, and we go to this as a kind of involuntary response, we'd be like, oh, you're really angry. You're really making me frustrated. You're really making me angry. Ugh. That is the noise that I would make to my kids probably when I'm getting stressed with them, really. But it's something that we can use to alleviate this anxiety and this anger and this tension and this stress, this kind of ball that we've built up in our stomachs. We can take a deep breath in and then it out. And you can keep doing that until you feel better. Deep breath in, it out. Another deep breath in, it out. And really reverberate that diaphragm, really make that a powerful sound, a sound that comes from the very guts of you to be able to shake out that negative emotion, that stagnant negative emotion that's holding there. Moving up towards the heart center. Here we hold our grief, our sorrow, our sadness, our loss, emptiness of heart, lack of love, helplessness, sense of being alone, disillusionment, embarrassment, shame, humiliation, repressed feelings, disappointment, genetic or ancient memories, cruelty, and meanness. This is where we hold it in our heart, all those negative emotions. And I would say that those emotions aren't even particularly strange emotions to the majority of us. Probably we feel one of these emotions at least once a week. Lack of love, helplessness perhaps, aloneness, loneliness. It makes your heart just shrink a little, hold small, that feeling of being lonely. Disillusionment, being let down, by yourself, by other people. That's disillusionment. Embarrassment, shame, humiliation, whether that's through your own perception of the world and how you're living it, or whether that's put onto you by somebody else. Repressed feelings, that not being able to speak your truth, disappointment, genetic or ancient memory, so anything that you've brought through from a previous life, through your genetic lineage, anything like that is held in your heart chakra, around this heart area. And this heart area isn't just at the front of the body, okay? It resonates through the back as well. So if you've got any shoulder issues, like middle back issues, any issues that affect the middle spine, your ability to bend and to be flexible in that area. If you find yourself feeling any sort of tension in your middle back, that there's a knot in between your shoulders, that there is, any kind of lack of movement or anything like that that's around that area, look towards your heart chakra and look at healing or beginning to heal that heart chakra, because that's really, the point that you need to be kind of working on, Then coming up towards your throat chakra, and this is towards self-expression. I work with, just going back to the oils, about the emotional oils. Every time I do this show, I use spearmint oil, which is an emotional oil designed to empower your throat chakra. And I use it every time that I go anywhere and need to do any kind of speaking from the heart, if you like. So whether I'm speaking in a group session, whether I'm talking openly and honestly to a new client, usually my anxiety, if you like, around speaking my truth, because I'm still working through all my issues as well. One of the reasons that I love the work I do so much is that I get to learn about myself and ways that I can help heal myself. And whilst at the same time being able to reflect back to other people everything that I've learned, whether I'm teaching yoga on the mat, whether I'm looking at meditation, whether I'm coaching, whether I am playing with children, at some level I'm working on myself as well as being able to reflect back and out to others as well. I'm very, very grateful for that. but it gives me a sense of responsibility to look out and absorb any ways that I can, that I find lots of different ways of being able to manage myself, so that I can really share those with other people, so that if perhaps the way that I work through things doesn't work for other people, there are other things that I can suggest that they might try. So for my throat chakra, which has been something that I've really needed to release and let go, predominantly because I think as a young person, I was always told, you're too loud, you're constantly talking. This was in school, this was at home, this was through friends of the family, this was from family, it was always like, children should be seen and not heard. That was my grandparents very much. My granddad was very much like that. And so it was always kind of like, be quiet, Kirsty, be quiet. See, children should be seen and not heard. And I was definitely the kind of more noisy one, the louder one, the more talkative, the more expressive in our family. But the throat center is all about lack of trust as well, inability to speak your feelings, lack of nurturing. Burden area that also comes with this is to do with not being able to really have confidence in the things that you're speaking about, the ways of self-expression. Again, not being able to ask for things that are truly important to you, always feeling like a sense of self-doubt, but always just never asking, just never saying what it is that you really, really mean. I've had a question come in or a conversational point. My partner doesn't understand my grief as he is not as close to the person I am grieving for. Do you have any tips to get him to back off my case? He thinks I should just move on with it. So that's a really hard position to be in. First of all, I thought I'd ask if your partner has ever actually had to experience any grief. That would be the first thing that I would want to ask. If your partner has experienced grief and has had a real bad experience around grief, he may be shutting you down because he just can't cope with that. He can't deal with going back to that place again for himself. If he hasn't had any experience of grief, then I suppose the obvious reflection on that is that he just can't empathize. He can't understand. He can't put himself in that position. And if you feel able to communicate, to talk with him about it and say to him, look, this is something that is really, really affecting me. And it would really help me to be able to talk to you about what I'm feeling and about the emotions that are coming up for me, because I feel in some respects that I'm out of control a lot with this. And it would really help to have you as kind of like my grounding source, to be able to kind of just bounce ideas off you and express some of the feelings that I'm feeling, so that you might be able to reflect back something a little bit more than just move on. Because actually I know that to be able to move on, I need to be able to work through this. And that means recognizing it, and that means feeling it, and that means moving through these emotions and expressing these emotions. Because if I don't express them, then I'm not dealing with it. I'm not moving forward to it. So you've said he has experienced loss or grief, but just couldn't stand the person I'm grieving for. It's an old partner and he just doesn't understand why I still care this way. Okay, so here I feel like there may be some jealousy coming through, some inability to deal with your past because it affects him directly in terms of his level of self-security, right? You're grieving for somebody that was in your life previous to him, not a part of your life that he was necessarily involved with, certainly not personally. And if he couldn't stand that person, then there's obviously some kind of a challenge there for him. I might hasten a guess to say that you probably have expressed that, this was a relationship that failed because of this, and this reason. And being the new kind of love of your life and the person who is feeling really protective of you because they love you so much, and because the male energy has this want to protect and to support and to kind of, defend the feminine. I feel like if he's got that defensiveness around him, then he can't understand why it is that you would still care. But the fact of the matter is, when you've loved somebody, it's very hard to really let go of all of that love. There's still that reason in your mind and in your heart why you fell in love with them in the first place. I mean, I've had abusive relationships in the past, were abusive relationship in the past, but I still can't quite completely let go. And again, I've done a lot of work on forgiveness for this person. So I've moved into quite a good space with it. But even when I came out of there and I was very much moving away and cutting off and distancing myself and moving, and moving back from that, there was still that part of me that recognized exactly why I fell in love with him. There will always be that. I will always be able to look back at all the loves in my life and be able to still recognize why it was I fell in love with them, even if they turned out to not be quite what I thought they were going to be, even if they treated me badly through emotional, physical abuse. I've experienced it both. There's always still that recognition of why I fell in love with them, because not every, people aren't all bad. And because you made a judgment about somebody that maybe turned out to be wrong, or they turned out to be somebody different from the person that you fell in love with and you thought they were, because we all kind of fall in love with that initial idea, right? And that initial person that we meet, and that for one reason or another sparks a feeling of love and joy inside of us. And then we get to know that person perhaps a little bit better, and different things come out, or different patterns of behavior are expressed, and we just can't live with that anymore. We can't be with that person anymore. But still that memory of that person that you fell in love with is still there, because love is true, right? It is the fundamental truth is love. It's the one thing that permeates through everything. And as much as you can hold disappointment, disillusionment, upset, grief, loss, all those sorts of things, you can hold those as well. You also can hold love, and you do hold love. It's the thing that I think keeps you from really going down, really, really dropping down, and it can break your heart. It can, moving away from a relationship that you had so much love in, and you felt so many different ways about that were positive and that lifted you up, and then you lose that relationship, for example, or that person changes so that you feel like you've lost. It's a hard one, because for you, if you're anything like me, you will feel that love probably until the day that you die, because that person's touched your heart. They've made that kind of little cross on your heart. And whether it's faded because of the way that they treated you post falling in love stage or not, it's still there. Now, if your partner has experienced loss and grief but just couldn't stand this person, that to me says he's being very defensive of you, and that he's also feeling insecure. And so why, when he's being defensive of you and he's defended you in the past, and he sees this other person that was a part of your life as a loser, or a waste of space, or something that you shouldn't be wasting your time anymore on, but you're still kind of processing that, then I think, again, communication would be the key here. And just to sort of say, I understand how you feel, and I respect and I love the fact that, these feelings that you're expressing to me come from your love for me, come from your want to defend me, come from your want to protect me. I love all that. But when someone makes a mark in your life, when someone comes into your life and makes an indelible mark on your heart, for example, it's natural to want to see that through to a conclusion. And unfortunately, if you've lost this person, I believe that it's natural to want to grieve that as well. However deep that goes is going to be entirely dependent on the relationship that you've had, and how long ago this was as well, because I know that, certain people in my life have had marriages, for example, that have broken up, and then their partner or their ex-partner has died years later. And there's huge mixed emotions that have come up for them. They felt sort of sense of guilt because they never quite resolved feelings with that person. And they wish they had. They wish that they'd been able to go out with like almost that clean slate back again. Whatever we did to one another, however we behaved to one another, no one wants to go leaving, you know, the book or the slate dirty with like mess on it and all that sort of thing. Everybody wants that kind of clean slate before they go out. If you get that opportunity to be able to do that, then I think that's wonderful. The majority of us, I don't think, do. And that's another emotion that we need to be able to process and experience. Um, yeah, I think in terms of tips as to how to get him off your case, I think it's got to be communication, compassion, love for him, respect for him as well, you know, and really mirroring that out to him and just sort of saying, you know, I feel like all these things, you know, your frustration with me is coming from your want to protect me. And I really appreciate that. You know, that makes me feel very special and makes me feel loved. It makes me feel safe. You know, all those things that he's trying to provide for you or he's been providing for you and that are the basis for these reactions. You know, it's a lovely place to be coming from. It's lovely that somebody wants to protect you like that. But to really hold a space for you to be able to move through things is being protective as well. You know, he can hold that space for you and you can deepen your relationship and deepen your level of intimacy by him being able to accept every part of you. And that includes your past and it includes your bad judgments, if you like, or the, you know, the people you took a chance on, fell in love with and who maybe let you down. Um, I think that's kind of, you know, like I say, communicating and being open and honest and just recognizing where his feelings are coming from as well. You know, maybe is the key, you know, to turn to him with love and to just sort of say, you know, I understand where you're coming from and I understand that this comes from you doing this and it comes from you wanting to protect me and it comes from your sense of love and your sense of defensiveness for me because you love me. And I really appreciate that. But this is something I'm feeling, whether it be right or wrong, and to be able to get through it and really move on with it. I need to be able to express this and I need to be able to feel like, you know, I don't have to go behind closed doors. I don't have to do this without you because otherwise I feel like that's going to divide us. You know, it's going to separate us. And it doesn't matter for what issue you're separated from. You know, if this is your life partner, if this is somebody that you are, you know, wanting to spend the rest of your life with or are committed to spending the rest of your life with, then it's important that you do these things together as well. It's important that they are there for you and you are there for them, even if it becomes uncomfortable to either party. You know, you've committed to this relationship. And there's going to be times when it gets tested. And if this is one of those times, then again, you know, as much as you're asking him to support you, you are obviously being called to support him as well so that you can move through this together and so that you can actually begin to process this together because that's going to be a unifying thing for your relationship. I hope that's helped. Moving back into the body, and this is actually quite, you know, poignant from this question, is that we often feel a lot of tension in your shoulders and around the back of your neck. And this is all about burden. This is all about emotional burden, right? So burdens and responsibilities, carrying heavy loads, weight of the world on your shoulders, you know, all these sorts of sayings that we have that really express the emotional, you know, the emotional strains or the emotional baggage that we carry with us. It's also about, it can also be about feeling under pressure. You know, that kind of, that tightening of the neck, that shoulder, that is also a defensiveness. When we round our shoulders, we're really rounding the back, compressing the front. We're beginning to defend ourselves or shoulder ourselves against the world. We do it, funnily enough, we do it even in weather conditions. So if it's too cold or it's rainy or it's windy or anything like that, one of the things that I've just had reflected back to me again, coming back to the UK, being used to kind of living in a boiling hot climate where you walk around just always trying to keep cool. And then I find I come back here and when it gets cold, my first initial physical reaction is to go, oh, and to kind of protect myself and warm myself, but also to shoulder myself against it, to roll my shoulders in, to bring my neck down, to put my back up against the wind, against the rain, against the cold, you know, and really be able to kind of physically manifest that. And so it's the same place for your burdens and your responsibilities. If they fit around on top of the shoulders, it comes from down the back of the neck. It can come as far down as the middle of the back. And if you are aware that you have any sort of tension there, any kind of roundness in your upper spine, um, any kind of neck tension. Also, I would go so far as to say illnesses or dis-ease such as vertigo are to do with all this as well. In my experience with vertigo, when I released the pressure and the emotional tension that I had resulting from previous relationship, but also from my nana's death, I had a lot of guilt around that as well. I harbor guilt. This is one thing I found out about myself. I'm very quick to harbor and to hold on to guilt. And one of the places that I felt it released when I began to work through it was from my middle back. And I had this kind of real pain one day when I woke up that disabled my right shoulder. So I was unable to move my shoulder anywhere past this point. And I was in my yoga teacher training at the time, and it was just an absolute disaster for me. I went into class, and my teacher was just sort of saying, what are you doing? You're constantly, because I was just constantly touching, massaging, trying to ease through this pain, because I knew I had asana practice later on. And I said to her, I know I've just woken up this morning and I just can't lift my arm past here. And I was recommended not to push it, not to strain it, to go and see an Ayurvedic massage guy who manipulated my back, just sort of went chink, 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 and went, it's there, touched right into this point that sent shockwaves through my spine up into my mind. And when he worked on this point and he released this emotional energy point, and I know it was emotional because I didn't stop crying the moment it went ping. And when I mean ping, I mean ping. It went straight up through my nervous system, or whatever system it was. Felt like an energy release, if I'm honest. And it went flying up into the inside of my brain, not the outside of my head, not like a physical thing that went through my skin. You know how you can feel stuff going through your skin and as energy rushes through? No, this was deeper. This was much more central to my integral part of my body. And it just went right up to the top of my mind. And the emotion that was released was instant. I started crying instantly, and I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop myself from crying, not just for a few minutes, but for about just under 3 hours, I was crying. I was an absolute mess. I really was. It started when he pinged that, and it did hurt, to be fair. When he pressed onto this point and released this point in my shoulder, it really hurt. And that was initially, I think, what kick-started my tears. But then it became about memories and visions and I don't know, like recurrences from my life, like stuff that I hadn't really dealt with and that I'd been pushing down. And I felt real sadness that had been held in this point in the back of my shoulders. I started crying. I was crying for about 20 minutes and I just couldn't stop. I kind of was sobbing initially, and he was apologetic and, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. And then it became obvious to the pair of us that this just wasn't stopping. This was something that he had released, because even though I was kind of almost talking normally to him, my eyes would not stop crying, and it became, I was breathing normally, but the tears were just streaming down my face. And he carried on until the end of the massage and then stopped. And I kind of tried to pull myself together, as you do. And was kind of, sniveling away, like, and, tissues after tissues, bless him, had been brought out. And I was kind of like, blowing into an already soggy tissue and trying to keep myself together. I knew I had to go outside. I knew I had to walk back to my ashram. And I was kind of a little bit like, oh my God, like, this is just going to be shameful, because it's kind of bad enough being a white person in India, let alone being a white person crying and a white woman crying in India as you walk down the street. Everybody's kind of looking at you. But it was something that I just couldn't avoid. And I walked as quickly as I could back to the ashram. There may have been some running involved. But when I got back to my room, I sobbed. I really, really sobbed. And it was the first experience that I've ever had of really having emotion that I'd held in my body physically released, and it lasted a long time. There was a lot to let go of. There were a lot of visions, there were a lot of thoughts, and there were certain things that came to me afterwards that were then magical experiences that turned the whole thing into a real time of joy, which actually I think went into last week, so I'm not going to go into any further along here. But it's that grief, it's that place where you hold that grief, you hold that burden, um, and and when it's released from there, it's this kind of um, all consuming release that you have, that permeated certainly, through my whole body that day. And it was crazy. So then when you're looking at the shoulders, you're looking at burden. So look at the responsibility that you have with your family. Look at the responsibility, the financial responsibility that you have. My husband at the moment is really suffering in this respect. He has a lot of responsibility on his shoulders in terms of staff, and stuff like that. And his business is not in a great place at the moment, not really for any other reason than it seems to be a trend across the industry that he's in. Um, but he's really feeling it. He's really concerned about his staff. He's concerned about the future, and it's manifesting in his upper spine. It's manifesting in pains in the neck, in shoulder ache, shoulder pain. And as much as I kind of say to him, so you need to kind of really look at releasing a lot of this and kind of working through this and recognizing that whatever you're doing, as long as you're doing your best, you've got this. You can do no more. Your responsibility is literally to manage and to do your best for these people. And as long as you're doing that, there really isn't much more you can do. You can't change the world markets. You can't do these sorts of things. You can only do what you can do. And as long as you're putting in your all, know that you are doing your best. And we've talked about these sort of things and that, but it's manifesting into his shoulder. So I'm regularly, again, kind of massaging and allowing that to trying to enable the body to break up that physical energy that it's holding on to. But it's also a case of him being able to let go of that and to be able to sort of shake it off almost. So any movement around the shoulders, around the neck, moving through these tension blocks will be very, very good for that. Anything that's heart opening, so interlocking your fingers behind your back, rolling your shoulders back and extending out through the arms is very good for being able to open up the shoulders, open up through the front of the chest as well. Deep breaths in here, using your rib cage to really expand through the chest, and into the skeletal system so that you can begin to open the shoulders, open the middle back, open through the back of the neck, using the breath. Because of course with the breath you invite the parasympathetic nervous system to really engage in. So again, you're using the breath, you're using that natural release mechanism that we have to be able to let go. Now, I want to kind of go over some of the science, if you like, of all this, because at the moment it sounds quite hypothetical. But there is science that proves and backs up all of this sort of stuff. And so I wanted to read. Now, I'm actually reading from kind of one of my one of my essential oils books, because I was kind of looking for this stuff and I knew I had this in my library of wealth, the stuff that you've kind of read and then shelved for later. And I couldn't think from where it was from. So this is taken from the Essential Oils for Happy Living by Rebecca Linda Hintz. And she's called the Emotions Mentor. So if you are interested in looking into your emotional self and how you might be able to support yourself emotionally when you're going through stuff, I can really recommend this book. It's really fascinating. And one of the things that she talks about, in fact, it's chapter 1, is your thoughts as chemical reactions. Right? So we're looking at the link between your thoughts, which obviously your thoughts can be the way you perceive life, but also the emotions that are triggered because of your perception, as chemical reactions in the body. The way your thought processes stimulate hormones, stimulate nerve response, stimulate, all sorts of things. And we'll get into that now. So I'm just going to read from there for a moment, because I kind of want you to understand how this works actually within the physical biological body, because I really think that not only is it fascinating, but it gives you an idea, a way of being able to fully understand how important it is to regulate and to be able to control the triggers to your emotions, to be able to know yourself and have done the work in that sense as well. So modern science has shown us, I'm just going to kind of paraphrase, but modern science has shown us today that our thoughts are physical, releasing chemicals inside our bodies the moment we think them. So the instant a thought occurs, your hypothalamus, the control center at the base of the brain, turns that thought into hundreds of neuropeptides, each associated with the dominant emotion of the corresponding thought. Right? So you've got all these different like little neuropeptides that get released that associate themselves with the dominant emotion of whatever it is that you're thinking about at that time. So whether it be anger or sadness or joy, happiness, fear, any of those things, you've got a little neuropeptide that will be released in response to that, and it's going to then travel down into your body. Those neuropeptides, your thoughts, are actual molecules being transmitted through your mind and body. Candace Pert, PhD, world-renowned neuroscientist and pharmacologist, known for pioneering much of the early work in mind-body medicine, discovered neuropeptides and found that they are carried through the bloodstream and transmitted from one neuron to another. I mean, we are amazing. Each neuropeptide interlocks with a special receptor on the receiving neuron's membrane, just like a lock fitting into a keyhole. The amino acids in each neuropeptide are then absorbed by your cells, right? So the information that your emotions are sending down into your body are absorbed on a cellular level. 37.7 trillion cells we're made up of. So imagine how many emotions your cells are storing. Imagine. That's crazy. And those cells can change depending on the nature of your thinking. Now, I've touched on this previously in other talks, but I've done a lot of work, a lot of study, a lot of research around the work of Dr. Bruce Lipton. If you haven't heard of him, research him. He's a guy who wrote The Biology of Belief. He's a fantastic scientist. He brings science to life. I love him. I'm going to see him on the 27th of October at a seminar and a workshop in London. And I honestly could not be more excited about this. The science geek in me is really excited to see this. But he has done 30 years of work around cellular health and the biology of self, C-E-L-F, right? How our cells respond to the environment around us. He has found and proven to be more important than our DNA structure, than the nutrients that we bring into our body. It's all about the environment, right? So the environment is in your body, in your cellular health, is hugely influenced, as we know, through like all the scientific research that's been done, and I've just read to you here as well. It's hugely influenced by the way we think, our thought patterns, our belief systems, the emotions that are triggered by certain responses. It's crazy, but to think that each cell of our body responds to the environment around it, and that is as subtle as the thought processes that you have in your mind. And each time you have one of these thought processes, a little neuropeptide is sent out with this information, and it's going to lock onto a cell. And the information that it's read from your emotion is going to permeate into that cell and give that cell some level of information, right? And your cell is going to respond according to that information. So, according to Dr. Pert's research, the body cells develop more and more specialized receptors for the neuropeptides to which they are most exposed. So they get kind of, they get used to the information being brought down to them. They begin to almost look for it. It says, in fact, cells will even begin to crave these neuropeptides and ask the hypothalamus to produce them. So the parts of your body, the cells in your body that have been affected by the emotions or the thought processes that you've had in your mind, you've had them in your mind. They've attached themselves to a little neuron. The little neuron has sent out a neuropeptide. The neuropeptide has gone down into a certain part of your body that would resonate around this. So we're back into the energy centers of our body where these things get held. If it's grief, it's around your shoulders. If it is loss or sorrow or sadness or grief, it's around your heart. Fears and phobias around your stomach, around your solar plexus, around that sort of area. Anger, old stuff, sexual issues, all those sort of things a little bit lower into your sacral chakra, and your survival center when you feel rejected or betrayed is right at the very root of you, the right at the very bottom of your spine. And so these little neuropeptides are going down, they're attaching to the cells, and then the cells are saying, oh, well, okay, so we're being trained to think like this. This is the response that we're being given. This is what we need to kind of be surrounding ourselves with, because this is the environment that we're being told is acceptable because it's been sent down from the hypothalamus, from the main center of the brain, right? These are the messages that you're giving your body. Every time you're having an emotion, chemical messengers are sent out into your physical self to hold this information in one place or another. And when it gets there, permeates into your cellular self, permeates into then your tissue, into your muscles, into your organs in that area. And they begin to look for more of the same, because it's kind of like food being given to them, as I understand it, right? This is what they're being fed. So they're kind of looking for more of the same way we do with the food that we like. You know, when we're given sort of foods we like, we taste. Yes, I like that one. Oh, I love pizza. You know, craving pizza, right? And our cells begin to do the same. Over time, your cells wind up supporting a self-fulfilling emotional prophecy, all brought about by the power of thought. I mean, this sort of stuff is mind-blowing, and it allows you to look at yourself in a completely different light, because it allows you the freedom now, or the knowledge, to be able to look at yourself and think, right, my physical self is reflecting something back to me. What is it? It might be a negative thought pattern. It might be grief or an emotion that you're holding on to. You know, but if you're feeling any disease in your body anywhere, any illness, any tension, any regular point of stress, look at where that's coming from and begin to really associate that with the stuff that you're either telling yourself, the emotions that you're feeling, things that are going on in your life, because you will be able to then isolate out what it is that you are telling yourself, where this negativity is coming from, and you'll be able to change the thought processes attached to it, because at the end of the day, as much as you might send yourself negative thought patterns, you can also heal yourself and send yourself positive stuff as well, right? So you get what you think about, no matter if you want it. Understanding the power of thoughts, therefore, becomes critical to permanently solving psychological and physical conditions. So moving on, I'm kind of just going to paraphrase through this, but it says, looking at thoughts in this manner makes it easy to see how repetitive negative thinking can manifest itself in a weak or sick body. I mean, that just makes sense, right? If you've got loads of negative information coming down to a certain part of your body, going into the cells and telling them all this negative information, then it makes sense that that part of your body will move into dis-ease, right? Or illness. Negative thoughts can become costly to your health as they quickly break down the whole body and leave it vulnerable to disease. Positive thinking, on the other hand, generates cellular vitality. Negative thoughts shatter the nervous system. Thoughts that are fear-based or anger fueled break down cells, leaving the entire cellular system out of balance. Positive thoughts, particularly thoughts of love and gratitude, alter chemistry in positive ways, increasing cellular immunity. Understanding your body chemistry and making lifestyle adjustments is central to jumping personal healing. Just as families need to communicate well to function effectively, just as companies need to offer adequate inter-office communication to stay profitable, the body's cells must communicate well within the body for it to stay healthy, the mind to be fully competent. Adjusting your cellular communication, or in other words, changing your thought processes, strengthens the body's natural ability to heal itself. So there you are. The science, the facts, the experience, It's mind-blowing. Get your head around it. Get your head around the fact that every thought that you have sends out a chemical messenger into your body that then gets stuck in that area and it manifests even more. Now think of all the diseases that we know are about, cellular health malfunctioning, whether that be to do with something like asthma, whether that be to do with recurrent throat problems, whether that be to do with infertility. It could be to do with, it could be something simple, in all honesty, about stresses, how you're feeling about the world, what you're perceiving in your world, how you see your relationships. I know from my own personal experience, again, that your knees, for example, are all about cushioning the responses that you're feeling, cushioning your way through life. And so if you're ever experiencing any problem with your knees, look into that. Look into what it is that you're finding is hard to move forward in life. I sometimes get swelling in my right knee. And when I looked into the emotional links to the right knee, it was all about being stubborn and not wanting to move forward with something and feeling like you're losing control over it. And again, for me, with kind of my background and my research, I know that that's the masculine side of me. So of course that would react to all those things because it's being held back by its very nature. And so, that again was kind of just a way of me feeling like, there's so much truth to all this. The next person I want to read from is a book by Deepak Chopra, and this is The Soul of Leadership. There we go. And we're talking about emotional intelligence. So emotional freedom. In order to bond effectively with others, you must be emotionally free, right? So this is kind of talking about how you can really interact with other people. But it's asking you to look at yourself as well as an emotional person, an emotional self, so that you can empathize and also so that you can work through your emotions to be able to help and reflect out to other people. So it says, stay aware of your body. Sensations of tightness, constriction, stiffness, discomfort, and pain are indications that negative emotions are asking to be acknowledged and released. So again, emotions reflecting back out through your physical self. Be aware. Be mindful of your body. Really center in and find out where these emotions that are holding you back or affecting yourself physically are coming from. It says, witness your feelings. Emotions suck us in and inevitably color our judgments. But if you observe your emotions objectively as passing events whose influence will diminish over time, you can resist being drawn in by them. So the whole point of emotions is that you do express and you do feel, but they're not supposed to kind of linger around too much, And I would say that the idea of emotions is that you feel them and you experience them and you learn from them and you move on. You let them go. Part of the moving on and moving through of emotions is to be able to let them go at the end. And if you don't, then all that negative emotion that we're talking about with the peptides and with everything else it stays stagnant in your body. It just stays where it is. And as we went through before with all the different energy centers, and we've spoken about with my little chart thing, here we go. Now I'm looking at emotional and this energy centers of the body and looking at problems with the right side. Knees, ankles can reflect feelings and lacking support in career and finances. Can also be a way of slowing you down to take stock of situation. The left side, problem with left side, legs, knees, ankles, can reflect feelings of lack of emotional support. Old injuries that still cause pain are due to unresolved emotional stuff and can be evident for years. So that's the other thing. If you've got an injury, you have got scar tissue around a certain part of your body. Now, scar tissue is by its nature, and as we know with the scars that we can see on the outside of our body, it's a different type of tissue. It's a binary tissue. It locks in and it forms a real tight, not quite as elastic skin that will stop infection from getting in and kind of just make us aware that perhaps we've got that issue there. Anybody who's had any kind of like major surgery, any surgery at all, if I'm honest, and whose body has been subject to foreign bodies entering, for example, I'm thinking about perhaps implants. I'm thinking about perhaps plastic surgery, those sorts of things. Be aware that you have scar tissue around these areas now, and that this scar tissue can help clog up some of the emotions that are being passed through. Be mindful of these things, because if you ever do begin to experience some kind of dis-ease, some kind of illness and imbalance in that area, you need to be looking at your emotional self as well as your physical self. And unfortunately, we live in a culture, especially here in the West, but really, talking about the whole world, where we believe that we can take a pill and it will fix whatever it is that we're feeling. Now, with our emotional selves, we know we can't do that, don't we? If you think about it, you know that if you take a pill for something emotional, then you're affecting the balance of your body, emotionally. Now, when you are depressed and they prescribe you antidepressants, you're not just taking something that's going to alter the chemicals in your brain, but you're also taking something that's going to alter you physically as well. Not least because of the chemicals that you're taking into your body, but also because the fact that you are tampering now with neurotransmitters, with your body's chemical responses to situations, and you're affecting that. You're directly affecting that. And it's the same with anything that affects you emotionally and mentally. It's the same thing with drinking. It's the same thing with smoking. Anything that we are addicted to, even food, all those sorts of things. They're releasing different releasing different responses, different thought patterns out into your brain, and then your brain is then sending all this stuff down into your body, connecting them with your cellular self, and you're getting either negative or positive memories and relations and emotions and everything getting stored in your physical self. These things are important. This is important to know, because going forward, with all this stuff in mind, wouldn't you want to educate our children about this sort of thing? Wouldn't you want to say to them, do you know what? We're seeing unprecedented amounts of disease, of mental health problems, depression and anxiety. We're seeing obesity at the highest level it's been. We're also seeing diseases like anorexia and bulimia as, having a resurgence in popularity, if that's the right term or phrase for those sorts of things. These are control-based problems. These are responses to emotions that aren't being processed, to things that have happened in your life that you haven't worked through. And if you are in any kind of situation where you're able to hold a space for a young person to really be able to feel and to tell them and to guide them through their feelings, please start to do that as much as you can, seriously, because it's one of the things that you can save people a lot of heartache if you give them permission to feel, With our constructive phrase, I've already kind of come out with about 5 or 6 different ways of being able to express, being able to grow a pair, pulling your big girl pants up, getting a grip, stiff upper lip, all these sorts of things. It's all designed to ask you to forget that emotion and move forward, logically speaking, but that's not how we work. And if you forget that emotion, your mind still reacted to it, still sending the little peptides down and everything, but you haven't done the work to then allow other peptides to go down and push those ones out and off them off. Eliminate them out, because actually you've worked it out and you've looked through it and you recognize that yes, that happened, and yes, it made you feel that way, but this was the cause, and you don't want that to continue, so you clear it and you clear the emotions. It's a fascinating subject, and it's one that I don't believe is really covered at all. It surprises me still that in this day and age, we still don't teach our children about our physical body that we live in. The most that we do there is we might teach them home economics and nutrition, if you like, in cookery class or in our home economics class. We teach them physical stuff like PE or games. We teach them how to use, how to play, how to respond in a team setting for that. but we don't teach them how to look after their physical selves. We don't teach ourselves, and we don't teach our children that it's okay to have all these emotions, that it's actually perfectly natural, that we're all built with them. We don't, why don't we speak to them about that sort of thing? Why don't we ever talk about loss and grief and how that feels in preparation for them going through it themselves? Or do we have to just respond to everything? Where is the proactivity in our relationships with our children and with all the kids and the young people that we're responsible for in various areas of our lives? We should be talking about it. We should be really open about emotions and about the way that you process them. Because I believe that's the first step as well, to really being able to isolate and calm down this level of emotional stress, if you like, that that is the response system that we have, and all the different disorders that we're going through. It's really opened my eyes, opening up this whole topic, especially at the time I'm at the moment where I'm going through stuff myself personally. It's really opened my eyes as to how important it is to spend time with yourself, drop in with yourself on a daily basis to check where you are. Now, I do this through meditation and yoga. This is the way I do it. And I've found success through that. But I'm pretty confident. Okay, the meditation, just close your eyes in place of the meditation. It says, close your eyes and just begin to run your mind's eye up from the very tip of your big toe all the way up and through the soles of your feet, up through the back of your leg into the knee, from the knee then out and up towards the crown, and really, really spend time looking at that so that you can visualize it as you do it. Really spend a lot of time on your visualization and techniques and stuff like that, because it's imperative that you do use them. And if you can get into the habit of having your kind of emotional response, if you like, and then controlling that with a very mindful meditation, or with a mindfulness act, or with being able to translate to other people what is it that they've done that has really triggered your response. And always, as I always say, just go with love there, okay? Because remember, it's not just them you're talking to, it's yourself as well. So you be kind, be loving, be supportive, be all of those things, because it's imperative not just to your health, but to their health as well. Because that's the other thing, right? Like, we're all releasing these neuropeptides, but some of us have a lot more logic in our minds than others. So some of us will be able to clear this sort of stuff up pretty quick. But my children wouldn't know what neuropeptide was if it came and bit them on the buttock. They don't know about anything like that. So it's going to be down to me to begin to introduce it. And then when I feel like they're old enough, I shall throw the science at them and we'll go through that. And we'll see what we think is really the most important thing that the government did about, within our time, rather than Brexit. We'll really begin to notice and appreciate how much he did do. And yeah, hopefully just kind of go on from there. So we've talked about emotions. We've talked about the importance of being able to recognize your emotions and to begin to do the work on controlling them. We've talked about where your emotions are stored in your body and what emotions might be stored in these various places, so that you can look at what, if you're suffering from something, what is working for you. And what isn't. And maybe I've given you a few ideas as to how you can work through that. And certainly PM me on Facebook, or you can write on the comments here or something like that, anything you'd like to know, and I'd be more than happy to go over it with you. And I think one of the other things that we've gone over is also the spiritual side. It's the recognizing that this is a natural thing that we all need to go through, but that it's not always easy to go through it alone. We're a community species, we're community beings. We like to be around other people. We like to talk to other people. And yet, for some strange reason, our body isn't really made up in that way. It's all very internal. And I think that's just because friendship will kind of come and go, but the one person you're always going to be with is going to be yourself. So, this is information for you specifically. Um, yeah, like I say, it's fascinating. The whole thing's fascinating to me. And when I opened this can of worms last week, I was equally fascinated as I am now. And like I say, there's so much information out there when you start looking. So do get looking. Like I printed off that one from the Hay House, and this one from Mystic Dreams. Okay, and that would tell you about emotional energy centers of the body, and about the left brain and the right brain, and how they work together in unison to support you. Anything else that I wanted to tell you? So one of the things that you can do when you begin to notice a sort of an imbalance or whatever is ask yourself, am I willing to let this go? Am I willing to accept this? No one can accept any experience as part of any journey. It's my path. It's my life. And that would be really like your mantra going forward. It's my path. It's my life. Whatever other people say to you, listen, be polite, be effective in the say that if they say, well, take that home, I want to eat all that punchy, and you say to yourself, I don't want to eat that. Like I'm supposed to be on a diet and I've eaten 2 chocolates, and if I eat all of that sort of thing, that's just going to push me right back over, and I might as well have not been dieting for the last 2 weeks. So what do you say? Do you say that to them? Do you say, just Trace, I'm really, really sorry. I don't want to, skip the yoga session that I've got booked. Be honest, be open, try to really look deeply into what it is that's going to have to change, because with every change there comes sacrifice and consequence. So look before you change anything. Look back at the road, and have more patience. Have more patience, and then kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Forgive yourself, I suppose. It's all about forgiveness, isn't it? All the negative stuff tends to be forgiveness or love, and forgiveness really comes from love. So I hope that's kind of been a little bit more enlightening about emotions and how they're carried into our physicality. Why I even bothered starting this conversation in the first place, really, because I noticed how much of my physicality was responding to the grief that I'm experiencing. And how, if any way, could I really help to clear all that? We've talked about different methods that I know about clearing things, like the ha breathing through your diaphragm, by the 3-point breathing, when you're constantly breathing in deeply and holding, and then breathing out and holding. All those sorts of things, engaging all the different systems in the body. And enabling you to send positive vibes down to places where you previously only had negative, and then making it even more negative by by bringing everything into one place again. So for them, they don't want to have to move around. They don't have to go from host to host and that sort of thing. They just want to stay where they are. And so what we're going to probably have to do is put together some idea as to how much we can ask her then. But anyway, I digress. It's really a fascinating subject, and the more you get into it, the more you realize how vitally important it is that we are talking to ourselves with love, with compassion, with intuition. That idea that I suppose that, without sounding kind of arrogant, and again, but one of the things that I want you to imagine is that nobody else is out there in your kimono dress thing. I've got this kimono dress that a friend of mine gave to my husband to give to me, and I love it. But it's just basically a kind of an Indian silk handmade scarf to go to India in. So it just goes straight over your head. Couldn't be easier. But I realised that actually it's about saying goodbye, babe. It's not about anything else. It's not about It's not about holding on. It's not about feeling any sense of guilt that you've not processed these emotions, anything like that. It's really about looking at yourself in all these 5 parts, being able to identify that your physical self is suffering, if your emotional self is suffering, if your psychic self is suffering, and recognizing that this suffering permeates all of those 3 things, and that suffering causes disease. Suffering causes disease, and it causes suffering and disease on a cellular level in your body. So again, any disease that really is directly affecting the cells, or is comes from directly affected cells. Look at your thought processes, look at what you're telling yourself, look at your emotions, and really begin to do some of the work around forgiveness, around letting go. And like I said, you can contact me via Facebook or my Kirsty Bentley Taylor. I am on Facebook if you've got any more questions. You can also go to my Facebook page, This Happy Guru, and we can communicate and connect like that. And I'm always really keen to connect in with my listeners or anybody that really resonates with my work, because it's nice. It's nice to to be able to feel that you are helping people, especially with the job that I do. I love it. Like, it's my calling, to be out there helping people as much as I can, for as many people as I can. And I really, really love it. So anyway, ending on that note, a positive note, so that I don't kind of start sending random neuropeptides down to my cells that, it's all gotten a bit on top at the end. I want to say thank you so much for listening. And I'll be carrying on with my emotions talk next week, culminating that really. And so I hope you enjoy it. And if you didn't catch last week's, jump onto last week's, and save the date for next week. Thank you so much for listening. Namaste.
Humanity has been on an epic journey of discovery, learning the truth about the world we live in. New discoveries about the true origins of humanity, ancient history, free energy, as well as the systematic corruption of world governments are now on the forefront of our daily reality. Is the world headed towards destruction based on control and power? Or is an opportunity now being presented to shift and uplift into a higher consciousness? My name is Mel V, co-founder and creative director of Conscious Consumer Network, an independent broadcast network that was launched on the 1st of January 2015. In the last 3 years, Conscious Consumer Network has broadcast over 2,800 shows in multiple languages, featuring guests from across the world, whilst creating media that is aimed at the creation of a free, fair, peaceful, just, sustainable world. Conscious Consumer Network provides full training and an interactive support network for all broadcasters, and we are always looking for inspiring and educational content.
Hi, this is Lainey Liberty.
And this is Miro Siegel.
In 2018, Conscious Consumer Network has expanded to multiple broadcast locations, increasing our availability and reach across the world, remaining on the cutting edge of independent media. If we wish to create a better world, we must first create better media, geared towards real education instead of indoctrination.
You guys really are what changing the world is going to be about. It's educating kids at a grassroots level.
Having become a pillar of stability in the turbulent world of independent media, we have even more going on in 2018. Conscious Consumer Network is a publicly funded network, and we rely on all of you to keep us on the air. Show your support for independent media by donating to our 2018 Network Support Fund. Dare to seek a better world. Support independent media.